I want to get my master's and I want it in yoga. Like that's so unique. I also want to teach in a college, and you have a master's degree to teach in a college. This is the perfect situation.
Welcome to episode number 4 of Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. My name is Reka and I am your host. I hope you're having a lovely day so far. And thank you so much to all of you who reached out to me and told me how much you enjoyed last week's episode with Karen. Her episode was full of gems and wisdoms and inspiration, so I hope that conversation was fun and interesting to you as much as it was for me to interview her. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go give it a listen. It is episode number 3 from last week. This week, I have a fun conversation for you. I interviewed Stephanie. I know Stephanie from the studio I work at, and she was a manager in the past. She is also a yoga teacher. Let me tell you a little bit about Stephanie. Stephanie began instructing yoga in 2013 through a variety of class formats that serve students at all levels. After receiving her master's degree in yoga studies in 2019, she began to teach yoga courses in order to bring the practice of yoga to undergraduate college students. The course material is based on her research that she conducted at Loyola Marymount University, LMU, where she studied the effects that yoga had on college students' mental health and emotional well-being. In 2020, she applied the coursework into a passion project of hers, which was to create a yoga lifestyle planner. It is important to her that these lessons are accessible to anyone around the globe. Prana Planner was launched in 2021 and is the first and only planner in the world that is themed around a yogic lifestyle. Stephanie is passionate about sustainability, equality, health, and education for all. So if you are interested in learning about yoga in higher education, maybe getting a yoga studies degree as your master's degree, Stephanie's conversation is going to be very interesting for you. So enjoy our conversation with Stephanie. All right, welcome Stephanie for coming to join me on this Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. I'm so happy that you're here and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Stephanie, how long have you been teaching yoga for?
I began teaching yoga in 2013. So that is, about a decade of teaching now. I will say that I've gone through rhythms of being a teacher where I've gone through bouts taking some time off from teaching and focusing on some other full-time roles that I've had that still involve the yoga world. But I would here and there I've noticed that I've gone through rhythms where I've taken maybe a few months off of teaching. But since I've started and been involved in the yoga world, it's been since 2013, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, 10 years, a decade of teaching, which is amazing. So I'm curious, what were you doing before you took your first teacher training? What was your job before then?
So my job before that was my first job right after graduating college. And as a senior in college, I got an internship working for a private jet company. I'm from Long Beach, California, and there was a private jet company based out of the Long Beach airport. And I saw the internship flyer right outside of my college counselor's office. And I was like, that seems interesting. I love travel. I need an internship. So I interned for this company. And when I graduated at the end of the semester, they offered me a job. And of course, I took it. I worked there for 4 years and I was just in guest services. It was a startup company at the time. And it was a great first job to have right out of college when I was like obviously still really young and figuring things out. And it was probably halfway through my 4-year duration of being there that I started to feel just really unfulfilled with what I was doing. And it was a fun job. I loved my coworkers, but I just didn't feel like this was something that was really filling my cup up. And I also at that time was starting to practice yoga. And I had been frequenting my studio at the time that I was obsessed with at least a couple of times a week and became a part of that community. And I was asked if I wanted to do teacher training. And I thought, well, I love yoga. And I've always kind of felt like I could potentially be a good teacher, but I never knew of what subject. And so I signed up for teacher training. It was a 200-hour. I feel like at most studios, the 200 hours span over the course of 2 months. So it was one of those 8-week curriculums. And I started teaching yoga just on the side once a week. And I still maintain my full-time job at the private jet company. And after 2 more years of doing that, I decided I had enough of what I was doing at my full-time job. And I needed to reconnect with myself and what I wanted to do. And so thankfully I had the opportunity to save some money and quit that job so that my boyfriend and I could go on a backpacking trip. And it was kind of definitely, I don't want to say like a soul searching kind of trip, but it was one of those like most memorable trips where, you're going for an extended period of time, like 5 months, where you can really just like leave your life behind and kind of just figure out what's important to you. And towards the end of that trip, that's when I realized okay, I'm in love with yoga. I've been teaching yoga just like on the side, like for fun, but I think that I'm ready to step into a path career-wise that is like fully engulfed in yoga and all that it is. So when I came back from that trip was when I started to work full-time in yoga spaces.
That's amazing. So I want to know, did you go to Cal State Long Beach?
I did.
Okay. Yeah. Me too. What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2011.
Okay. Oh my God. We were there the same time. I graduated in 2010. But I left right away after graduating. I moved to South Africa. I want to know, what was your major in college that kind of brought you to that job? And also, when you went to go backpacking for 5 months, where did you go?
Okay. So my major at Cal State Long Beach was communication studies. And I fell into that major when I just randomly took a communications class as an elective. And the subject was on like interpersonal communication. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is such an amazing subject. Like just studying how humans interact with other humans. Like that was so interesting to me. And so that's how I fell into the communication studies major. And when I was a senior and realizing like, oh, I need to find an internship, working within like the private aviation world, like it doesn't really, I feel like with a communications major, you can essentially work anywhere. So at that point, I was kind of just like following like what my interests were at the time. So that's what led me to the internship at this company.
Mm-hmm.
And when I decided to go on the backpacking trip, we started in Costa Rica, and we chose starting in Costa Rica because we really wanted to go to Envision Festival.
Ah, yes.
And yeah, so we landed in Costa Rica. We stayed on a sustainable farm for a few weeks, and then went to Envision, and we were there in Costa Rica in total for about a month and a half ish. And then from Costa Rica, we went down to Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, and then came back home. It was just shy of under 5 months. And if I'm ever giving any college student advice, that is like my biggest piece of advice is like, while you're young, do whatever you can to go on an extended backpacking trip on the other side of the world where you have no itinerary but to just wander, because you learn so much about yourself, and it's just a great way to see how other cultures live. And because you learn so much about yourself at such a really young age, it helps you develop that relationship with yourself of like what you want to really do moving forward. Like I really needed that.
Yeah. I love that. And I totally 100% agree with you, because after I graduated from my grad school, I went to South Africa to do my grad school, but I was like, I'm going on a trip. And I flew to Peru. And from Peru, I traveled backpacked all the way back to California. And it took about 9 months. So, all that's probably similar country that you visited. I also visited along the way. So definitely it was a soul searching trip for me too.
Oh, so awesome. Yeah. So necessary. I really wish that everyone could do that. It's such an awesome thing.
Definitely. Finishing that trip, you realize like yoga is where you want to work. The yoga world is where you want to kind of invest your time and energy into. So was there any maybe a fear or a doubt within yourself of like, is this possible to be a full-time yoga teacher? Or was there also maybe a doubt or dissatisfaction maybe you've heard from other people in your life, maybe your friends, family, partners? Because I have experienced quite a bit of, when are you going to get a real job kind of comments. So I want to hear your experience on that.
Oh my gosh, I have so many things I want to say. So hopefully I remember everything. So in terms of feeling doubtful of if I could make this happen, I don't think that there was necessarily at that time in my life anyone specific who was coming at me saying or advising me or suggesting me that like, hey, I don't know if this is the right career path for you. But I guess I just had maybe this perception somehow that maybe this couldn't be a sustainable job. However, the reason why what led me to take on this full-time role in the yoga world was actually a entry-level management position at the studio that I was a part of. And so I was given the opportunity to work this entry-level management position that was only part-time, but then what filled up the rest of my hours to make it a full-time position was then teaching. So I was, I guess you could say like part-time teaching and then part-time beginning to learn studio operations and what it took to run and operate and manage a yoga studio. So that kind of dampened any fear that I might have or any concerns that I might had about, is this possible? Because in terms of like hours.
Mm-hmm.
I was still technically working full time, and I was also learning about the yoga business side
Mm-hmm.
of things,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to like teaching on a more regular basis than what I had been doing before. And what's funny is like fast forward now 10 years later, I this is funny, but I was hanging out with some of my family members, and my younger sister, like just jokingly and lovingly said like, "Oh, you don't remind me of a 35-year-old." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And she's like, "Well, like I just picture like 35-year-old, like they have like kids and like a job and like just naming off all these things. Like, I have a job. Like, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And she was just like, I think she kind of like backtracked her way out of that. But yeah, there is definitely this perspective, I think, globally, that a yoga teacher isn't a real job. So yeah, I think that that's kind of funny, but obviously people are making it happen, like us. Interesting, like that perspective. I wonder like where that comes from.
Yeah. I'm very curious that entered into a management role, entry level, but I think you ended up working more as a management even in the future. Navigating both the management role and the teacher role, did you ever feel like one was getting in the way of other role?
Oh yeah. So eventually that entry level position turned into a full-time position within that company. And then I then went on to manage at another studio. But the two definitely at some points would conflict, because as someone who is working in studio operations and in studio management, you're typically at the studio most of the time. And because I also had the teaching experience, if there were any emergencies, I would kind of need to drop what I was doing as a manager and teach. And being a yoga teacher, there's so much energetic and mental and emotional prep work that you need to do before you teach a group of students. And so being able to step from like a management or operations mind and mentality and hat to then go into like a nurturing teacher role, like at the drop of a hat, like, and just the frustration that you're experiencing from like going from, okay, we have this emergency. Okay, now I need to step in. And then everything that I had to do at that time needs to stop and wait. It's definitely, it can be draining. And so thankfully, as my career evolved and I was managing more on a full-time basis, I was able to minimize the amount of times or classes that I was teaching a week, so that I could really save my energy and make those classes special. I guess in terms of what I preferred or what I enjoyed, that was also kind of like a rhythm. I have this idea of like rhythms have been just like sticking with me a lot lately, just the idea of like ebbing and flowing in and out of things. And so I would say like during that time when I was doing both like teaching and managing, I would definitely go through ebbs and flows of like, oh, I'm really loving like learning the business side of things. Like I can tend to be very like structured in my mind in terms of like how I do things. And so like I loved like policies and structures and procedures and like creating documents and things like that. But then I would go through bouts of where I'm like, I hate that stuff. Like I just want to be like creative and like and nurturing and like be a part of like and really in like the classroom with people who want to learn about yoga and who want to practice yoga. So I definitely experienced this just like ebb and flow of like what I really loved and like where I felt more comfortable. And I guess where I landed with all of that is that I've learned that management of a space like that just wasn't for me long term. I think that it really served its purpose for me at the time. And I learned so much again about myself, similar to the backpacking experience. Like I learned so much about myself and I learned so much about where I wanted to go from that experience.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Because for me, I never had to manage a studio before, except for like my own online studio. But I seen a lot of yoga studio owners and managers who try to juggle both teaching and managing and teaching and owning. Or some studio just have, just hire a manager who just, that's, sole job is to manage and not really teach. But it feels like it must be difficult to juggle the two role. And it's a very different role, completely different role. So yeah, thank you for sharing your experience on that. And I know you eventually went to LMU to study yoga, did a yoga study program. So kind of tell me what led you to that.
Yeah, so it began with, again, like I was with a career or in a place in my career where I was starting to feel unfulfilled and not feeling like I was evolving anymore. I kind of felt like I was at a standstill. And so I, at the time, was still like, I love yoga. This is everything that I want. This is my life. I want to gain more education on it. And at the time, first heard about the LMU yoga studies program through another teacher that I had met at my first yoga community.
Maybe explain what LMU yoga study program is for people who don't know what it is.
Oh, yeah. For Marymount, a private university in Los Angeles, and they are the only university in the nation. I also think in the world still that offers a master's degree in yoga studies.
Wow.
And yoga studies consists of the history of yoga, all the different schools of yoga, the different philosophies, and kind of like how that has influenced modern yoga, which is what we all practice today. It's a 2-year program. Well, it was 2 years at the time because it was only in person. Now, if you go to LMU and do the yoga studies program, they have a hybrid option where you're both virtual and in person, and you could do it over the course of 3 years. But they have great professors on their faculty, and just I've learned so much from that program. So I highly recommend it if people wanted to the nitty gritty of where yoga comes from. It was a great program. But so let's see. So I basically followed one of my friends who did the program. She was graduating at the time that I was applying, and she was graduating with a job lined up for her at Orange Coast College, which is a community college in Orange County. And she was going to bring yoga to that college. And her goal was to teach yoga in an academic setting. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Like, I love school. I love being a student. I had loved teaching so far. I love yoga. I want to learn more about yoga. What if I go and do the master's program and I essentially like follow what she does and try to get a teaching job at a college?
How did she already have a job before finishing that program? Like, did it happen while she was in school, yoga study program? Somebody just approached her and, hey, we want you to teach yoga studies at our college. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, she tells me that she was extremely lucky in this opportunity. So she had somehow been involved at Orange Coast College in another avenue. I'm forgetting how. She wasn't a teacher there yet, but she had a master's degree with another sub. And because of that, she was able to teach at the college. It's escaping me what she was originally hired on to do. But because she was soon going to be graduating with another master's degree, specifically in yoga, okay, let's bring on this program. And she wanted on a teacher training program. And what she started there, a 200-hour teacher training program over the course of 2 semesters. So you take 3 classes one semester, 2 later in the second semester. And when you graduate, you have your Yoga Alliance certified.
Which is amazing that they do that. It's so
awesome. I mean, I don't know of any other colleges who are doing that right now.
Yeah. And I love that it's long, a year long, that they really get to dive deep into. And I love that from what I heard, it's quite accessible financially for a lot of students who want to become a yoga teacher.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I don't know the exact numbers. I think it's roughly around like half the cost of what you would pay if you were to go to a yoga studio and do a teacher training.
Yeah. And it seems like quality of education you get is I would imagine it's high quality.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Ashley, who put together the Orange Coast College teacher training program, she's phenomenal. And before she did the yoga studies program, she has been studying through the Krishnamacharya lineage and Vini Yoga. So she brings a lot of that in addition to her yoga therapy education into the teacher training program, which is the curriculum that is taught at OCC. But yeah, I mean, my first 200-hour that I did had none of what we talk about in this program in terms of history and philosophy. So it's a really special program, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, tell me, because I kind of cut you off in a way that you were talking about you wanting to do this yoga study program because you knew somebody who was just graduating.
Oh, yes. So how I found LMU. Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. So I basically was like, I'm going to follow her. I'm going to do the program and I'm going to try to get a teaching job at a college. So I do the program right when I graduated. That summer, Ashley reached out to me and said that they needed someone to teach in the program. I was like, this is crazy. Amazing. So I felt just extremely lucky and blessed, kind of like the right time at the right place at the right time kind of moment. So I started teaching. That was in 2019 in the fall. And then COVID happened. I got furloughed from the college because at that time, due to low student enrollment, they just essentially had to get rid of all of their teachers who hadn't been in like senior status at that point. So I took a break from OCC. I wasn't there for 2 years, I think, and maybe a year and a half. And then I came back 2 falls ago. So I've been back for the last 2 years. It's been really nice. But that is kind of how I fell into LMU, was just this first feeling of unfulfillment with where I currently was. And then this desire to get more education, and then turning into this desire to take what I had been doing already, but in an academic setting. So just kind of changing the environment that I was in.
Yeah. It's super interesting because a program like yoga studies as a graduate master's program, like you said, it might be the only one in the United States, or if it is, it's just very rare. And I think it's amazing that you chose that path. And there aren't many yoga study graduates out there in the world. I know a few who went through the same program as you, and I think it's amazing how deep, in-depth knowledge and studying that you get to do on yoga. Was there any uncertainty or maybe doubts in terms of spending the next 2 years in this graduate program, investing a lot financially, but would there be a job for me at the end?
Yeah, there definitely was uncertainty, but I am maybe to my own demise is that I wouldn't say that. I am very much a person who just follows what my gut tells me to do, even if logically it doesn't make sense. And I had the support, like the emotional support and the cheering on of my family and my partner. And so I knew that it was something that I just had to do. I wanted to do it. And that's pretty much how I live my life is if I want to do something, I just do it. I just make it happen. And so I did it. I was like, I want to get my master's, and I want it in yoga. Like that's so unique.
Yeah.
I also want to teach in a college, and you have a master's degree to teach in a college. This is the perfect situation. I wasn't like Ashley, who had something lined up when I was going to be done, but I just knew that I wanted to do the program, and I was going to just see what came out of it. And what's also crazy that I completely forgot to mention is that when I got furloughed from OCC, because of COVID and we were all on lockdown, I was one of the Americans during lockdown who was on unemployment and therefore wasn't doing anything at the time other than being at home. And I, being the Virgo Pitta that I am, was like, I'm going to use this time to do something. And a dream that I've always had was to create and design a daily planner because I'm a Virgo and I love structure and I love school and organization. So I was like, okay, I'm going to finally do it. I'm going to finally make a planner since I'm doing nothing every single day. Like this is going to be my job. I can design a planner. And that is where I came up with Prana Planner, which is the company that I launched in 2021. So a year later after lockdown started. And what I did was like, okay, well, I just started teaching yoga in an academic setting. What if I put that curriculum essentially into the planner and create a yoga lifestyle planner? And that's what I did. Again, I was like, if I want to do it, I'll just do it. So I did it. And it was challenging. It was fun. I launched it in 2021, and that now has been a whole nother journey that I've embarked upon, which again takes what I've previously done in the past, but is now putting it in a completely different setting. Like now I'm really learning how to be a retailer. I'm learning how to navigate e-commerce. I'm learning how to build my own company and brand, which is this whole thing. I'm learning how to work with paper goods because it's like a printed product. So that was something beautiful that came out of everything as well. And so what I think about, like reflecting on all of this, is like, you really, like, if you just open yourself up to what inspires you at that time and you just go for it and you do it, you learn about that subject, and you also learn if that is what you really want. And you learn that if that's not what you really want, that, you know, okay, I went through that chapter. What is the next step? And then you take it from there. And it's just this evolution of everything that I've been doing.
I love that. And I love hearing about your Prana Planner and how it came to be. And I'm very, very interested. Want to know more about it. What's in it? I definitely want to purchase one myself. One thing that I wanted to mention was what you said. You're the type of person who just know what you want and you're going to go for it. And it just reminded me of the yoga philosophy and teachings of yoga. Is that like inner knowing that we have deep inside. And then we learn to listen to that voice more than other chatterings and egos and doubts and fear. And we have so many voices in our head, but there's that one inner knowing, that deep, true, authentic self. That voice is, I feel like we learn to listen to that from the practice of yoga. So it reminded me of that. And I can see that you are living and following your Dharma. And that's so beautiful to witness. I want to ask about, you did mention a little bit about COVID and pandemic, and that brought you to birth Prana Planner. What was your teaching, or it doesn't have to be teaching, but your livelihood look like before pandemic, and then kind of fast forwarding to now, post pandemic, and now everything's back open again. How did your life change from the pandemic, before and after?
Wow, that is a great question. Financially, before the pandemic, I was in a better place than I am now. And I have been struggling since the pandemic to financially get back to where I was before. However, I have experienced an abundance of free time that I haven't had before. And in that free time, I have been doing a lot of my own personal spiritual work. And in that, I've been continuing to receive this message that although it seems and appears and feels like I have taken a step back, because we all look at like what our resources are as a barometer of how successful we are. And so like in a way, it definitely feels to me like I've taken a huge step backwards, but I've been able to, I think that I have been given that circumstance in order to learn a different lesson. And so I've had this space, like mentally and emotionally, to really study myself and come back to a sadhana, a daily spiritual practice, which I definitely lost when I was working so much before the pandemic. And I really do think that my spiritual connection with myself and with spirit and with Purusha, if any of the listeners are familiar with Purusha and Prakriti, just that reconnection to that, I think is going to, or I know is going to just set me off into a much better situation than I was in before the pandemic. So, I mean, yes, like it's been, a good chunk of time since things have come back into place and things have been back into operations. But I do know, like fully within my heart, that there's always a lesson out of every situation that you put yourself in, or that the universe puts yourself in. And so I'm really thankful for this time that I've had since the pandemic to kind of really have the space to design like where I want to go next, which is still in progress. Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that. And kind of coming back to now, the present moment, what are some things that you're involved in? What does your average week of working look like? Because it seems like you have different projects or different places you're working at and different streams of income. So I would love to know how's your life now? What kind of stream of income do you have? And what are some things you're plugged into?
Yeah. So my consistent roles that I have are, first, I am a yoga producer for an online yoga and fitness platform. And what that means is I work with our teachers, or who we call our talent, behind the scenes to carve out what their content is going to be on the platform. I work with the talent to design what our content calendar is going to look like. And then I help with a lot of admin to make that happen. It's so cool because this job that I do as a producer, it involves a lot of planning and a lot of looking at the calendar, which was another like, oh my gosh, this is so aligned with what I do or already with like Prana Planner and stuff. That takes up a good chunk of my time mostly. But then I have a lot of other space to take on teaching jobs, such as teaching at Orange Coast College in the fall semester. I'm there Monday through Wednesday night. When I'm not teaching at OCC in the fall, I teach at Raw Yoga once a week. And I love, love, love that community in Long Beach. It's so special. And then on top of that, I will take on like special teaching events. One of the places that I do special events at is Cal State Long Beach. I just taught a meditation class there on campus. And I'm also a Lululemon ambassador. So the Long Beach store, which is over on 2nd and PCH, I am in my second year of my ambassadorship there. And that is just so fun to be a part of. We do quite a few events every month. Obviously, I'm on the yoga side, but we do like fitness events and running events. And it's fun to be a part of those communities as well, because I'm also just a big fitness person on top of yoga. So it's been a great opportunity for me to branch out and show the Long Beach community on a larger scale who I am and what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds so exciting, all the things that you are involved in. And I'm very curious, the yoga producing job that you do, how did you come across that position for such a well-known international company?
I actually just found it on LinkedIn of all places. But then on top of seeing it on LinkedIn, which I had applied to right away, I received an LMU alumni newsletter from the yoga studies program. And they had listed the job posting in the newsletter. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, great. So the interview process was kind of long. It took several months before I ended up getting the role. But I think it was just the right time, right place kind of situation where I was needing a job and found a job that was connected to the school that I graduated from and kind of checked off all the boxes of what I've previously done in the past.
Yeah. The next question that I want to ask is, if necessary, could you fully support yourself financially through your yoga related jobs currently?
Currently, yes. The answer is yes. However, it wouldn't sustain the lifestyle that I desire. I would love to get back to where I was before the pandemic in terms of finances and surpass where I was before, but I'm still trying to find that perfect little nook and cranny of where in this space I'm going to land and like build myself up from there. So yeah, I would say right now I'm still kind of gaining abundance spiritually while I have this free time and I guess a lack of other resources at the moment. But I do think that it really truly is for a reason, and that I'm really learning a lot about myself and making a spiritual connection. And I mean, I think that then it's obvious that I am getting a little bit of help. Thankfully, I have a partner who I live with and that I've been with actually for for exactly the same amount of time I've been teaching yoga. So we've been together for a little over a decade now. And so he has been and has to help support me at this time. Previously, that wasn't necessary, but we're definitely on the road to getting back to where we were before, and in my dreams, surpassing where we were before.
I think for anybody listening, to be a full-time yoga teacher or to be living in a yoga world as our career path, there's so much ebbs and flow. I don't think I ever had 2 months that my income was the same. Every month my income is different depending on what kind of opportunity I had this week, or maybe I went off to travel, so I have to get a sub. Some amazing opportunities come our way, but that can be gone in a split second as well. It's very fluid, and it's almost some period of our life, things are maybe going well financially, but maybe you might have a few seasons of life where it's not as it used to be, but then maybe you are feeling more fulfilled in another way. So I think it's not a set number with full-time yoga teaching, I think. So thank you for sharing that honestly and vulnerably.
Yeah.
What aspects of being a yoga teacher and somebody who works in the yoga world and industry as your career path, what do you love the most, and what do you find is the most challenging?
What I love the most is the people that I meet. When I would say the first half of this decade that I've been in the yoga world, I was living in Long Beach, but working in Orange County. And I had a great community of people down there. But what I would say the stark differences of like living in the community that you are a part of. So like now that most of my work has transitioned to Long Beach, I so much more often run into people just out and about in the town, because at the studio at Raw Yoga Long Beach, like I have met hundreds of people because I was there full time for so long. And so now it's just so much more common where I'm just out and about, and I see a friend from the yoga studio. And I think that that's really special. It just makes you feel like you have family everywhere. And that's truly, I think, why that's my favorite thing, or that the people that I meet is my favorite thing about it, is because there are just so many good people out there that you meet in the yoga spaces who are working on themselves, who love other people, who love the environment, who want to help each other and support each other. And everyone is also just so unique and come from different backgrounds and have all these different jobs. And I love hearing about people's lives. And I think that that is like something that I've connected on with a lot of people in the yoga spaces, is just like their lives and how they can be so different, but how we're so relatable at the same time.
I love that about Long Beach as well. So now reflecting back on your journey of you entering into the yoga world last decade or so, what are some lessons you learned along the way that maybe if you could go back in time 10 years ago yourself, you can give yourself advice on, or maybe even new teachers now coming out of 200 hours YTT, or somebody who's thinking about maybe pursuing yoga as their career? What are some advice you want to give them, or what are some lessons you learned along the way that you want to pass on?
My advice for anyone who is a new yoga teacher is to practice, practice, practice. Don't stop practicing. So essentially, don't stop teaching, even if it means you're only teaching once a month to a small, intimate group. Keep practicing that muscle of sharing what you've learned and how it relates to your life, because there's so much to learn from each other. And teaching is definitely a skill that needs to be practiced. And I would also advise new students to know that yoga, not only as a practice, but if you're taking it as a career too, is really just this lifelong process. Like I said earlier, it's really an evolution of trying things on and seeing what works for you, seeing what you love and what resonates with you, and how then you want to share that out into the rest of the world. You may have done 200-hour teacher training, which falls under a certain umbrella or lineage or style of yoga. And then 5-10 years later, you're loving and teaching a style of yoga. That's something that I've experienced. Like I started with power vinyasa yoga, hot yoga, make me sweat, completely crush me. Like I want to feel like I'm dying in class. I want it hot and loud and like super energetic. And now it's like, put me in a yin class, sound bowls, like nice and cool. I want blankets. And it's more now a subtle body practice than a gross body practice. And so if you're new to teaching yoga, or even if you're new to practicing yoga, like just know that there's an evolution and a process that is going to unfold. And it might happen in a couple years, it might happen in a couple of decades, but to just remain open to what comes to you.
I love that advice. And where do you see yourself moving forward in this career path in yoga in the future?
I still have a deep love and passion for being in higher education. So working on a college campus, I love working with students at that age. So I still would really love to grow in that space, whether it is as a teacher for a course, or perhaps maybe that means having a role on campus in helping with wellness events. And I also coupling that with continuing to grow my Prana Planner business, which really was designed to also help college students. I think that what can be a huge struggle for people is managing their time and managing what they need to do. And so if you can learn how to do that when you're in college and in a mindful and compassionate way to yourself, it will lead you to success with everything that you do after college. So I guess like my desire and where I want to see myself moving forward really involves being still in the educational space and expanding my business, which helps people better manage their time and their energy. So kind of a blend of those two, where I want to be.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time and all the amazing wisdoms and your life experiences that you shared. Is there anything you want to share in terms of where people can find you, maybe your website, social media, any upcoming offerings or anything going on that you want to share to the listener today?
Yeah. First, you can find me online at Prana Planner. And I have a website, which is also pranaplanner.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. And I am usually at my two local yoga communities, which is Raw Yoga Long Beach near the airport, and the Lululemon store in Long Beach as well. So come find me there. If you have yet to do teacher training, we have amazing teachers here on the podcast who are involved in so many 200 hours. And the one that I'm involved with is the one at Orange Coast College. So if you're in Orange County and you're looking for a year-long program, I'm a part of that team and I'd love to meet you all.
Yay. Thank you. I'll definitely put all the links on the show notes. And yeah, I definitely would recommend that teacher training. From what I heard, it just, I haven't had my personal experience from it, but it seems like it's a 1 year long that you really get to dedicate and learn so much about yoga, not only physical part, but the philosophy and history And I love that all the students get a lot of teaching experiences as well. And one of the things that I think is so important is how accessible they make it financially for a lot of people to be able to get that 200-hour certificate. So I really appreciate that. What is it? Orange Coast Community College offering that. And so excited that you are in that faculty and teaching it there as well. So thank you, Stephanie, so much for your time today. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I hope all the listeners did as well. And I will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Stephanie. If you are enjoying this podcast, please share this podcast with your fellow yoga teachers. Leave me a review on whatever app that you're listening to your podcast from. And you can find me on Instagram at Reika Yoga, ReikaYoga. I would love to hear any questions or feedback you have about this podcast. My website is reikayoga.com. I teach weekly live Zoom yoga classes on my online yoga studio. I also do mentorship for yoga teachers. So if you want to hear all about my offerings, please follow me on Instagram or check out my website. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and talk to you next week. Bye.